co-hosting the show with me.
Hi.
And we are bringing forward a tremendous amount of information. And I thank you very much for that, Jay.
Oh, absolutely.
So we were talking about the agents and how they are advertising themselves on the site. And I just wanted to touch on the agent. There's an agent premier site as well that they can have a page, right? How does that work?
Pure agent websites. That's one of the features that we offer in our advertising packages, basically. So what that does, a real estate agent buys a certain number of impressions in a zip code. That's the fundamental ad package that a real estate agent buys. But included in that is things like access to .loop, which is the transaction management system we talked about earlier, and some other things, training and lots of information. But we also offer a real estate agent website, which is WordPress based, which if you know anything about websites, it's fairly user friendly. We stripped out a lot of the functionality of WordPress that's behind the scenes that nobody ever uses to greatly simplify it and make a user friendly, easy to update website for real estate agents.
And if I'm not mistaken,
their own personal site.
WordPress is like the backbone of some crazy percentage of websites.
25% of the entire internet is WordPress. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's super powerful. It's not some cheesy fly-by-night software. It's a solid website. Now, like any other real estate agent website, if any agent that has their own website, you have to work the website. Meaning you have to add content to it. You have to update it. That's just pure manual labor. You said so in your introduction to me, your gracious introduction, by the way. That's what I did before I joined Zillow. Was I had a big blog and it was WordPress based. Yeah. But it's not necessarily the software that makes it work well. It's what you put into it. You still have to do that with the Premier Agent website, but it's there.
And stripping out some of the background noise on the Zillow press site, as it's called, makes it easier for the agent. And one of the things that I still laugh about is that Jay's site at the very bottom would say powered by WordPress, caffeine, and cursing.
Yeah. Well, that was true. I mean, that's what it took.
Remember
that? No wonder you two get along so well.
Oh my God, I just loved that. And for anybody that who is not an HTML programmer, making your own website, it's frustrating because you don't always know all the code, right?
You curse a lot.
And you curse, and you're up in the wee hours of the night because you're just obsessed with making this thing work. So Zillow made it easy. They just made it point and click with this site. A number of agents in our firm use those sites.
Yes.
And,
they definitely made it easy. So I want to take us a little bit off topic. We were on the break before, and it's something that Phil and I talk about often, and I know that, Jay, you were a broker as well. I've been in the business for 26 years, and, you know, back in the day, and I know, Phil, you're right there with me, right? How many years in the business?
20.
20, okay. And Jay, when did you start?
2004, so what, 12, 13 years?
You're a baby.
I'm a baby.
Ah, okay. So back in the day when I started, now that I'm the oldest one in the room here, back then they said we really controlled all of the data. Every single thing that went, every single transaction, the broker really protected that. And we were even taught back in the day not to give out the address of a house. And there were trainings on this. When the phone rang and you were on floor time or uptime or whatever you call it in your local market, when that phone rang, the one thing you wanted to do was get the client into the office and do not give out that address, and you wanted to scoop them up because we were really the gatekeepers of that information, all of that data. And I know on the break we were just talking about how things have changed, and I'm going to turn it over to Phil because you had some questions about that, and you wanted to really hit on some topics on what Zillow has done to change that for the consumer.
Right. So the consumer experience shopping for a home when Victoria and I were first in the business was that if you saw a house for sale, for example, you couldn't Google it. There was no internet to Google it on. It wasn't listed online. You saw a house for sale, or you wanted to find a house for sale. To get any information on that house, you had to get it from a real estate broker. And the term that you aptly used was that the brokers were the gatekeepers of information. And that had a certain amount of leverage to it, where we actually believed that our value proposition to the public was that
information.
Yeah,
and there was a tug of war that would go on.
There was
the caller on the phone would say, "Just give me the address," and the agent would say, "When can you come into the office?"
That's right. That's right. So we almost viewed it as intellectual property. Okay. the consumer on their own couldn't find out how long a house was for sale. They couldn't find out if the price had been reduced by $5, $10, or $100,000 at any time. They didn't know any of these things. Zillow came in and changed the game. Talk about that.
Well, sure. Well, first, I think the internet changed the game, not necessarily Zillow, because it started even before Zillow. Zillow, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary just last year, so we've been around 10 years. The internet's been around since what? It depends on who you believe or how it's defined.
Wide use,
Roughly
mid-90s.
1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1992-ish, somewhere around there. So, welcome to the internet age. The data wants to be free. That sounds so flaky and philosophical, but it really does. And agents need to understand, I think real estate agents need to understand that their role has shifted from the gatekeeper of the information to the interpreter of the data, okay? Consumers are faced with a insane amount of data now, right? Stuff that, as you just mentioned, they never had even just a few years ago. Now they've got it, and guess what? They still don't know what to do with it, okay? It's overwhelming, the amount of information you have, and that's why you need a real estate professional to help you wade through and interpret and understand that data.
Right. So the consumer wanted to know, for example, how long the house had been for sale. If it just went on the market and it was a hot listing, sometimes the brokers would fudge that. It was a new listing to that broker, but it had been listed with 5 brokers prior to that.
Right.
They couldn't sell this dog.
Yeah.
Or it was new to the market for the first time in 20 years. Consumer didn't know. Technically, it was a new listing. Same thing with price reductions. Same thing with being off the market and being on the market. Eventually, the address became public.
Yeah.
All right. All of those things came out, yes, because of the internet. But one of the torchbearers was Zillow, and good job on that, because it did tell the real estate community that our value was beyond just being the source of the information, and where we could start to work to be the advocate for the consumer and interpreting
And that's
the data.
a very positive change
It's
that happened for the real
incredibly
estate
positive.
industry.
It's hugely positive. It's made consumers' lives better. It's made real estate agents and brokers' lives better. Nobody should want to be hoarding the data, and your sole value proposition is, well, I have this piece of paper that you can't see. Okay, that's not
That was
really a
almost
true.
its own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not really
That
a
was it,
true value
totally.
proposition, right? That really doesn't have a whole lot of value. Now, when I say, okay, I'm a real estate agent or broker, you can come into my office. I still want to meet you, and then you can explain how real estate works and how mortgages work, and why you want an inspection, and what an escrow company is, and what the inspection period is, and how to ask for repairs. There's so much that goes into a real estate transaction and agents have such a place in those real estate real estate transactions. It has so much more value than just clutching that piece of paper to their
Right.
chest.
But change is very difficult for many of us.
It's very hard.
And when all these changes were taking place, a lot of people are fear-based, and they fear, if this happens, this will happen.
Yep.
And if that happens, this will happen. So they were very nervous about the internet. And then Zillow comes along and really kicks it up a few notches and says, we're going to give you all of the data. We're going to give you anything you want to know. And what has happened is it definitely was a positive change. Interestingly enough, they say millennials. Right? If you talk to millennials, they say,
I knew this word was going to be
It
uttered.
has to come up.
you had to, right?
I can't believe it took 50 minutes to say that.
The M word.
You take the millennials, and a lot of people say that they're disconnected and they don't care, and they're so tech savvy, they won't need the real estate agent, they'll just go out and find their own information. Well, they did some research on that, and they asked millennials who are buying real estate, what are the expectations of your real estate agent? And the expectation isn't that you're going to find me the property.
Right.
The expectation isn't that you're going to find me any information related to that, because they can do that on their own. What they are looking for is the skill.
Yep.
Take me from beginning to the end.
Because you can't get that skill from a YouTube video
That's right.
or a document on the internet. You've got to have the person that's lived through it and worked through it, and that's the real estate agent and broker. Here's an interesting little factoid, because I talk to agents all the time online, and they're like, trying to replace real estate agents, or real estate agents are fading away just like a travel agent. The National Association of Realtors has published a home buyer and seller report every year for the past 15 or 16 or 20 years. And they chart and they graph these things And if you go and look in whenever Zillow started, 2004, thank
Something
you,
like that.
ish, the percentage of people that have used a real estate agent has increased almost every year since Zillow founded. Not decreased, increased.
Yes.
So the internet, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, whatever you want to call it, has not made agents go away. In fact, the usage of agents is increasing over time, not decreasing.
I found that incredibly ironic.
It is ironic.
I mean, so now we're even more important to the transaction.
Yep.
We always
Which
were
is where you
important.
want to be, right? If you're a real estate
Exactly
agent,
where
don't
you
you want
wanna
to be
be.
more important to it?
One would think. Okay, so giving the consumer what they want. There was a guy who did advertisements around here who had this famous phrase: "A well-educated consumer is our best customer," and that seems to have become axiomatic. If I could throw in
Good
a
one.
ninth grade word,
Nice.
that seems to have become a business cornerstone fundamental. So we've got a couple of things I want to clarify. It's really the Zillow group now.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
3 or 4 years ago, we were just Zillow. It was Zillow.com,
Yeah.
and that was all that Zillow was.
Right.
Go to Zillow.com, that was it. And then we started acquiring other companies, making acquisitions, and expanding. When we acquired Trulia, who at the time, and still, is second or third, depending on whose numbers you listen to, most highest traffic website, real estate website on the planet. We acquired them 3 years ago now and became Zillow Group. Zillow Group is basically an umbrella company. It's the I don't know the
The parent company.
It's like the
parent
General
company.
Motors with different nameplates.
Exactly, or it's like Marriott hotels, right?
Okay.
You stay at the Marriott, you're familiar with it. Well, there's also the Courtyard
Yes.
by Marriott, and Marriott has a bunch of different hotel brands
Right.
and chains. Think of Zillow as kind of the same way, or like newspapers, right? Gannett owns a bazillion different newspapers, but they're still Gannett. So Zillow Group is the parent company, incorporates Zillow, Trulia, Victoria rattled them all off earlier.
Street Easy,
Street
Hot
Easy,
Pads.
Hot Pads, Naked
Right,
Apartments.
Naked Apartments.
And
Naked
then
Apartments.
Naked, I know you like that one, right?
I like that one.
And then the more
It's not what you think.
the more B2B business brands of Bridge Interactive, Redstone, Dotloop.
Mhm.
So it's basically, we just kind of rebranded. We couldn't just be Zillow because Zillow was the Zillow.com brand site. So we needed a parent, an umbrella to have to include everybody that's up underneath us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that is now the Zillow group.
That's the Zillow group.
And you're affiliated with the Zillow group.
I am. We have employees that work just on Zillow.com, and we have employees that just work on Trulia.com, and we have people that just work on Street Easy. But my function is more broad and crosses over all the different brands that we have.
Okay, so now that you mentioned all of these, wonderful companies that are out there that now fall under Zillow, what's next?
What's next?
Anything new? Any new companies coming on
We
board?
did
or
just
maybe
last week acquired right here. Right, I'm pointing like anybody can see what I'm pointing at.
They can. We're live video streaming.
Hi guys. The Hamptons. Hampton Real Estate Online is a website, and I don't understand. I will freely admit I don't understand the Hamptons real estate, but it's much like New York. It's
They don't
New
understand
York
it in the
City.
Hamptons either.
It's a very different
New York
market.
City and the Hamptons
Yeah.
are very different than
So we have,
anywhere else.
yeah, right now we have Street Easy and Naked Apartments.
Street
that-
Easy is the Manhattan property.
Yes, and Naked Apartments, my understanding is covers most of the other boroughs in New York City, and then the Hamptons out on Long Island. So it's basically when we got Hamptons Real Estate Online, HREO, not so much for the website itself, but for their listings, so that we could kind of fold those listings into the whole Street Easy Naked Apartments New York experience. This is the biggest marketplace in the world. So the only way, if you want to get into the biggest real estate marketplace in the world, which is the New York City area, you've got to do things like this.
Okay.
So we have
You
time
have-
for my question or your question?
Well, hurry up.
Okay.
Because I have one last question that I need to ask.
Okay,
you.
so there's one more thing, and maybe it's a quick statement, but when we were getting market reports on the news, business stations and so forth, they would refer to something called the Case-Shiller report, which
Mhm.
talked about property values. But yet another thing that Zillow entered into quite successfully is they came out with their own market report and became the authoritative commentator really on property values as well. Speak to that real quick.
We now can predict what Case Shiller are going to say before they say it, and we're incredibly accurate with that.
That's impressive.
It is impressive. It really is. So the home value index, the Zillow HVI, is what it is. We take all the reams of data that we have, because we have Zestimate history on 110 million properties back for 10 years, and we our nerdy scientists, geeks, massage that into a home value index that comes out.
Gotcha.
Much like the
And we have
Okay,
one
so
more
I
question.
just have a fun question before we wrap up. What in the world does Zillow mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Zillions of pillows, right? Pillows are associated with homes. Zillions means a whole bunch. We have a whole bunch of homes. Literally, swear to God, it's on the street. Came from zillions of pillows. Zillow.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. We really appreciate your time here with us today. How do we reach you?
JAYT@ZillowGroup.com.
Wow, that's awesome that you're giving out that information.
Sure,
Okay. Very good. Thank you again. Phil, how do we reach you?
jphillip.com.
Great. And I'm Victoria Rivadeneira, and I can be reached at realestatetalk.com. I don't even know what my website is, but you know what? That's okay. We'll
Google
get
it.
it right next time. Yeah, so
Google
you
it.
can Google it if you could spell my name. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks.